Welcome to Theology Matters. This is Dr. John Clark, and today we've got a special guest with us, Bret Nazworth, who's the founder and president of a ministry called DM2, which stands for Disciple Makers Multiplied. And Bret, welcome to Theology Matters. It's really great to have you.
Well, thank you, John. I'm super stoked to be with you today and to be able to talk a little bit with you about what matters to us.
Yeah, Bret and I have known each other since I was 17 years old. And so we both have lots of personal stories on one another, but we'll leave that out of the podcast this morning. But one of the things we wanted to visit with you about, Bret, is something new that DM2 is doing. But before we do that, tell us a little bit about DM2, kind of when that was birthed, what you had in mind, and how the Lord has kind of guided that ministry.
So DM2 stands for Disciple Makers Multiplied. And we started this ministry back in about 2011. Although the concept had been started in the mid 2000, around 2005, 6, 7 in there. But the whole point of this ministry is to teach faithful men and women who will be able to teach others also. Of course, our ministry has largely been focused on the what is often called the majority world, or the third world, as some call it. But it's people beyond our borders was our initial focus. And since then, it has expanded. We didn't really plan the expansion. God did. And we're just trying to keep in the saddle, so to speak, as he goes and forward and leads us day by day. But Disciple Makers Multiplied trains faithful people to train others. And we believe Matthew 28, 19, and 20 includes the idea of creating disciples. And obviously, that's the commission there. Go make disciples of all the nations. And then it says baptizing them. We see that as getting them to become public with their faith, and then teaching them all things whatsoever I've commanded you. And so that's a broad stroke there. It's teaching the Word of God in the whole full counsel of God. And so we have tried to do that, at least what we feel are tools that are necessary for the man of God, the woman of God, to be able to go forward and really be successful in disciple making. And we've seen God use this ministry in amazing ways over the last 10 or 11 years. And we believe we have a great future ahead. So thanks for asking, John.
Yeah, you bet. And before we get too far, I want to mention to those that might be listening, you can find out more about DM2 at their website, which is DM2, the number 2, USA.org. And so you can find out a little bit more there. And Bret, one of the things that I'm really interested in as well, and I know one of the reasons that we brought you on today to talk about, is the ministry that DM2 has had among youth. And when I say youth, we're talking as young as middle school age, all the way through college age, in the way that this, again, as you mentioned, unplanned by us or by man or by the board of DM2, but God leading in the lives of young people and just watching that catch on fire. And so tell us a little bit about that and kind of transition into why we're talking today, which is really to advertise and to get the word out about 3D TC. And I'll let you explain what that is, but tell us a little bit about how that has happened.
Well, first of all, I would just say, that most of us have watched someone in our lives that we love dearly grow up and then walk away from the faith, whether it's through college or just in the work world. And that trend is a trend that we see across the board. You see the graying of the Church of Jesus Christ. Churches are, if you stand in the back of a typical church and look across the congregation, you see a lot of white hair, gray hair. You see the graying of the Church of Jesus Christ. And if we do not, get in and see it make a difference there, that's going to be the trend. And eventually those gray heads, they retire to glory, and so with that, and then with the with a push that happened I would say about 8 years ago by some young people who said, why don't you teach us? We were having great success with teaching pastors and leaders around the world. And some young people, we noticed that young people were coming, like you said, even as young as middle school, and sitting through entire conferences. And so some young people asked us, why don't you come and teach youth? And we thought, well, you bring the youth together, we'll put the team together and teach them. And our first conference was 5 youth came and 7 teachers. So, but through that, God has just done amazing things, John. That has exploded.
Now let me stop you there, because for the people that have never been DM2'd, say, explain why youth sitting through an entire conference, why that's such a big deal. I mean, we're not talking about 2 hours on a Saturday morning, 4 hours of playtime and games, and then maybe another hour session in the evening. What is a DM2 conference, really quickly? Just
so a DM2 conference is 6 to maybe as many as 10 hours of Bible teaching a day for 5 to 6 days. Now that's an average, with an average class that we do overseas. So you would think, young people would never do that. Not Americans, they'd never do it. You try to convince a youth pastor that young people can sit through that type of teaching, and they'll say, no, you don't understand our young people. Well, the truth is it works. Mm-hmm. And the reason is, I believe, is because we have tried to go in a little different way. We use youth to teach youth, for one thing now. And then we just let people know that, hey, this is discipleship. It's costly. It's an investment, and young people rise to the occasion. And they're excited about that. So anyway, with COVID and everything, things changed. About a year ago, my last trip was to New Guinea in February, and a year ago, Fiji. I went to Fiji, New Guinea, and Australia. And we came back from that trip, and COVID was just beginning to ramp up. And then before you knew it, things were shut down. And so as a ministry, we quickly did an online. We were one of the first people to really jump in and do like an online conference. We did a 6-day Gospel of John between Good Sunday and Easter, or Good Friday, and I guess it was Palm Sunday, mm-hmm. and Easter, and it turned out really good. We had over 1,000 people who signed up and participated in that. We had 40-something teachers. But as time wore on and we realized, hey, we're not going to travel. This is not going away quickly. We saw the Lord just give us this idea of, why not train youth? Why not get a new generation of Americans and ready for becoming disciple makers? Churches are losing pastors left and right. They're finding it hard to replace them. The pipeline, the seminary pipeline is getting lean, and so it's not dripping, it's not pouring out anymore. It's dripping maybe. Mm-hmm. And so what we hope to do is to begin to take young adults and train them, giving them the Word of God so that they can become the next generation of God's workers. And that's where 3D TC, 3D Training Center, is the TC is a training center. 3D stands for disciple, develop, and disperse. So we're going to disciple. We're going to those who come. We're going to develop them as a believer. We're going to develop them as a worker, as a teacher of the Word of God, and then we're going to see them disperse out. And that's where we came up with the idea of 3D, and it really speaks of the whole, because DM2 really trains the whole person, not just the head, but the heart. And we bring discipleship into the training in a way that's very unique. Our professors are are right there in the class with the students. They don't just come in, do their thing, and then walk off, and you don't see them for a week. The way DM2 works is it's people with people. And so we're excited about that and truly believe that God is in this, and he is surely blessing amazingly with workers. I got a great staff coming in, teachers and staff members, as well as just the provisions, financial provisions and everything are coming in amazingly. Yeah.
Well, that's great. Yeah. In fact, in the next couple of sessions, I want to get into a lot more detail in terms of how this looks and what the plan is and those kind of things. Before we do that, though, tell us, just kind of describe too. I remember being one of your board members, being on a phone call with the board, and I can't even remember. Was it? It's a few months ago, maybe a little bit longer than that. And at that point, it was just an idea, and we said, "Yeah, go for it. Let's see what can happen." But tell us a little bit about how that process has developed, how the Lord has led. You've got obviously your local church there in Beaumont, Texas, has really stepped up to the plate in just an incredible way. But tell us just a little bit about that to give people an understanding of how the Lord's been leading thus far.
Yeah. So I've had this vision of training young adults for probably, I remember my daughter and I walking, 7-8 years ago, and she's like, "Dad, why don't you train, us? Why don't you train us young people?" And I remember had an idea, a concept that I thought might work. And it was at the time, it was going to take a lot of time away from what we were doing overseas. And so the board of directors said, no, let's can that idea for now. Liked the idea, but just didn't feel like the timing was right. And so probably back earlier this year, I've got a worker now that works side by side with me, Cody Hughes. And when he came on board, it was obvious I had some help so that I haven't had for a lot of years. And so with him there, and with COVID kicking in, and everybody realizing that things are going online a whole lot more and all, we thought, well, this may be the time to go ahead and start this 3D TC. And by the way, the 3D Training Center is not going to be online. It's going to be in person. And that's because we really are passionate about that personal touch, being involved in people's lives. That's why we don't just send out a link overseas to pastors and leaders. We actually go to them and teach them in person, because there's something about them seeing you seeing them, you hearing their story, they hearing your story, doing life together for even a short amount of time that is incredibly impactful. And so we decided to go ahead and start exploring the idea of starting a school, what that might look like. I had some ideas on paper, but so the first thing we needed was a place so I started getting obviously on the internet and looking at what is available out there in real estate, and probably ideally for us a church building, maybe an abandoned, or where a church maybe is no longer meeting. Maybe that would work for us. And so we really did not want to spend that kind of funding to do that. So what we did is one day I was talking to our pastor and telling him our vision. And he said, "Why don't you do that here at the church?" And I said, "Well, I don't really, I don't know how that would look. I don't really want to burden the church, with something like," and he's like, "No, that's our vision." Later on, I was read by the board of elders at Beaumont Bible Church exactly what was in their constitution, when they formed the church, to do this very type of thing. So it's just a marriage, made in heaven in many ways, as far as seeing the church and DM2 or 3DTC work together hand in hand.
Awesome. Well, Bret, we're going to continue this conversation on the next time we meet. Thank you, and we'll keep going here.